I have to say that although this situation is quite perilous, the whole thing of implementing tariffs and creating unnecessary pressures on the economy, but I still had to find some levity, some laughter in the headline at Politico, the online publication, when they stated it as, "He finally shot the hostage." This is what Trump has been threatening to do for quite some time. Apparently he believes in this with his body, mind, and soul since, I don't know, the beginning of time or some distant time long ago. He's convinced that this is the way to fix economies, which of course most people think is completely incorrect, but nothing new there. I mean, one thing about this guy is that he thinks of himself as some kind of genius, which itself would generally tell you that he absolutely isn't. In fact, it's the complete opposite. So now we're in the midst of a problem as a result. Now the thing is, how does this relate to the astrology? Well, first of all, we link it to a recent video in which I said this month he's navigating through a lot of Saturn, and that alone should have given him pause, but it didn't. And so he acted on his impulse, and just like, for example, the house that is traveling through the 8th, astrologers would generally tell you when Saturn is going through there, avoid surgeries, because surgeries are in that house, and Saturn is not an easy planet to associate to a major repair. So the logic is at least wait till it leaves the zone before doing the surgery. That house, though, has multiple meanings, and one of those meanings is tariffs, because tariffs are effectively taxes, they're levies, and taxes are in that house. That's the house of death, the house of taxes, the house of other people's money, and the house of insurance, etc. It's all in the same place. And so he's acted on it on a Saturn square. And I may have mentioned I'm sure I have, I know in my classes I've talked about this for sure. I may have brought this up at some other point about the danger of using Saturn in this way, the way he's doing it. Relatively minor example, but really illustrates the point, is Barack Obama's launching of the Affordable Care Act website back in the 2012-2013 period, and like a moth to a flame, he chose Saturn squaring the Sun. And of course it didn't go well until the Saturn separated from that part of the chart. Then it became smoother than at the time. And most astrologers would have said to him, don't do it then. Just stop for a while, reassess. There's probably a problem with it. In fact, was revealed when he did it. And so, bottom line, you would say, this is almost certainly not going to go well. However, tariffs may not show up as a problem right away. In fact, they usually take a while because they work their way into the economic situation, and then people begin to see higher costs and disruptions and so on. And this is where some or a lot of this may not show up until, for example, later in the year when Saturn returns to the proximity of these degrees. It won't quite get back as far as where it is today, but it'll get close enough that the fall period into the spring of 26 becomes really dicey for this guy, right? But all of this said, from the perspective of the way I'm titling the video and saying, is this going to finish him off? I would say probably not, or let me put it a different way. I think, given the meanings of the house, together with his age, his apparent condition, he's at the actuarial age where we talk about life expectancy. And so you put a planet like Saturn there, transiting through there. This goes to how I've talked about the connections, the ramifications, the relationships established toward health and well-being. And so from that vantage point, I would say he will be really lucky if the only thing he has to deal with is tariff problems, that he realizes that he has to backtrack on the tariffs, or that even if the tariffs become a huge problem and it's all accrued to him and to his administration, honestly, that is not the biggest problem here. The biggest problem is the connection to the death aspect of that house. And in that sense, we know that as we move toward the middle of the month, there is the eclipse in Virgo, lunar eclipse. So the sun will be in the 23 plus range of Pisces, the moon will be in Virgo. And that eclipse cuts across the exact place where the Saturn is transiting through. That's a major, major trigger. So, at minimum, you would look for some kind of crisis around the tariffs or related matters, because that's one of the meanings. But I'll let your imagination roam as to what else could happen. It's a particularly dicey moment as we move into the middle of the month. That's the bottom line on this. And I'll end by saying what I've said in quite a few videos recently, which is that we're all traveling through this period in time, which is quite challenging, and it becomes especially important to live our lives in a way that promotes equanimity in as much as possible. It's really the bottom line, because if we allow ourselves to be pulled in to the negativity of the news, things aren't going to go well, plain and simple. And the way this guy operates is just like a daily barrage. There's always something that he's doing to link us to potential triggers, and to rage and anger and dismay and depression and all the negative emotions. And to be honest, I think the greatest revenge we can take is to develop the discipline, the focus to not let ourselves be dragged down. Indeed, this might even be one of the deepest meanings of navigating through periods of time like this, because they give you the opportunity to practice something that maybe ordinarily we wouldn't be motivated to practice, but right now it becomes a necessity. So I'll be doing more on the eclipse in upcoming videos, but I'll leave it at that for now.